Let's continue to the highest mountain in Africa.
Kilimanjaro is definitely a mountain that I always wanted to climb. I was born in Africa, and since I was a child, I always thought that one day I want to be at the summit of the highest point in the continent. And being able to go there back in 2022 and getting to the top and doing it with two amazing friends was just tons of fun and definitely a highlight from the last few years. All right, let's go to the details. So the hike is really the trek is about 57 kilometers, and it takes about 5, 6 to 10 days depending on which route you choose and how difficult you make it, right? So certain tours try to do a certain route in 6 days, other do try to do it in 7 days, other take certain routes that take a little bit longer, and so it varies depending on the route. The elevation gain is about 5,114 meters. So the summit is almost at 6,000 meters, and you're starting at about just under 1,000 meter, and you're climbing up 5,114 meters. In order to do the trek, you must do it with a certified agency and guide, which means you cannot just go on your own and do the trek. The other thing to consider is there are no hotels, there are no sleeping or houses to spend the night inside the park. And like Everest Base Camp, which I know we both have done, there are little tea houses along the way where you can spend the night. When you're doing the trek, you need to bring everything with you and you need to take everything out, which means that the agencies hire a bunch of porters who carry the food, who carry the tents you're gonna sleep in, who carry clothes. They also carry the garbage out at the end, as well as everything you bring along. When we checked the prices to do it, the cost was anywhere from 1,500 to maybe 2,500. I'll say most of them were like around the 2,000 price point, 2,500 price point, depending on how many days again. Because the way to think about the budget is the price is set based on how many days you're going to do it, because every day you need to have hire the porters for more days, the guide for more days, there is more food, etc. So you just the shorter it is, the more affordable it can be. When we thought about doing it, we decided to opt for one of the more popular routes. So the two most popular routes, and I don't know what the data is, but if my memory is right, about 80 or 90% of people do one of these two routes, either the whiskey route or the Mashami route. We ended up doing the Mashami route. But as I mentioned before, some are shorter, longer. You can decide to pick another one, and the landscape varies depending on what side of the mountain you start the trekking. When we did it, we ended up choosing one of the agencies called Habari Adventures. I, of course, messaged a bunch of agencies. I ranked the top ones based on online feedback and reviews on Google, on TripAdvisor, etc. And then I reached out to a bunch of them. Habari Adventures specifically has a very good reputation, and they were very professional. Their website was very clear. They had good communication. They were very responsive, and so they were very professional in their engagement and answers to my questions. I followed up with a call with the owner. His name is Stan Wilfred. Super nice guy. I'm happy to call him a friend now. And he's a former porter and a former guide. And so he knows the mountain well. He worked with all the top agencies and eventually left to open his own agency. And when we talked, we really clicked. And so I agreed for us to work with his agency, but he had to come with us on the trek. And so he agreed, even though he's the owner and he has porters as well as guides working for him. He also guided us during that trek. So we had, in total, it was four of us. It was Pablito, Bianca, myself, and we had another person join us who had reached out to the agency and was interested in doing the trek on similar dates. Her name is Nirina. Shout out to Nirina, another good friend. We did it with the four of us. We had three guides with us, and we probably had about, I want to say maybe 10 or 12 porters with us. And so for 4 people, we had a team of 15 people supporting us. That gets you a sense of what the experience is.
Incredible. That's like, I cannot imagine it, you know. I think like all my trips are so self-sufficient, and I think this is how my friends travel as well. So it's incredible to think that you have all these assistants on the track. I guess it makes it easier.
It it definitely makes it easier, and um, the way to think about it is just like from a physical. Let's talk a little bit about the physical challenge first. From a physical challenge perspective, um, it wasn't very hard, relatively speaking, most of the way. Once we got to the last day and we were gonna get to the summit, so the last few hundred meters were probably some of the hardest physical um, challenge, like one of the hardest physical challenges I had to face. You basically are at 5,800, 5,900 meters, and you are walking, and every few steps you take, you're running out of oxygen, and your heart, you have your heart is beating very fast, and you can feel the altitude there, and so it just takes longer, and you feel a little tired. And then the funny part is, as soon as we summited and we descended back down, as soon as we crossed that threshold again around 5,700, 5,800, it just became very easy, and it was like back to normal. It was just this very interesting experience um, that I personally had. But overall, I do think that one should be physically fit to be able to do it. We were all very active when we tackled it, so it wasn't we didn't find it very challenging in that way. But if you're not physically fit, it can definitely be a challenge. The advantage of having a team supporting you is you can focus on trekking, enjoying it, looking at the view, etc. And then you have a team that's potentially goes ahead of you. So by the time you get to your destination after 3, 4, 5, 6 hours of trekking that day, they have already prepared a tea for you. You have some warm water. You can just sit down, relax in your tent. And they were also carrying a dining tent. So we had a little tent with a table, foldable chairs, and we'll sit down and actually have a proper meal. Like we literally were having protein meals, and we're having chicken and vegetables and soup while we're trekking. So definitely on the more luxurious experience rather than the carrying your backpack and making your own food the whole way.
Yeah, I don't know. It all sounds like, being white privileged person from Western world for me. Did it feel like it or actually not really? I mean, I know you're very good in making friends, but what do you think?
So one of my favorite photos from the trek is one when we're all hanging out with the porters in there. So they had their own tent, and that's where they would be cooking and preparing the food or resting. And so even though we had our own little tent with our little dining table set up, we would just go and sit with them and hang out and chit chat and get to know them. So definitely really bonded with the team. It was just an amazing experience, and like while we're there, we're learning a few words. We're learning about their background, about their experience, and that's human connection during the trip just made the whole experience really cool. And actually, that's one thing that they actually shared with us is most of the people participating in the trek kind of like do their own thing. So it feels like two different worlds. Versus for us, it was just like we're all hiking together and having a good time. But definitely, they're providing service. That's how they make a living, and one of the things that you do at the end is you pay your fee to be able to do the trek to the agency, and at the end tips are definitely appreciated. And so definitely recommend anybody doing the trek to be very generous with their tips to the porter, to the cook, to the guides who really go above and beyond to make your experience really good during the trek. So one last thing, how much did we pay? So at the end, our total price per person was 1,500 per person, plus tip. We the price I mentioned, like depending on the number of, and then we did it in 7 days, 6 nights, 7 days.
Okay. Do you think that it was enough time, or would you recommend to do it longer or shorter? What do you think?
It depends on your physical ability. we felt that we were all fit and that we were comfortable and we had experience with going up mountains, that are 4,000 meters, 4,500 meters. Like we had never gone up to about 6,000 meters, and so it was a bit of that was a challenge for us. But we wanted something where we didn't want to like trek for just 2 3 hours and then rest the following day in 2 3 hours. Like we definitely wanted the physical challenge of trekking longer, so we wanted to do it in a shorter period of time.
How many hours per day did you trek?
I think it was probably averaging about 4 or 5 hours per day.
Okay, so that's not much.
But no, you're at altitude. So when you are hiking at 1,000 meter, 2,000 meter, like 4 or 5 hours at 4 or 5,000 meter is probably like 10 hours at regular at 1 or 2,000 meters. Like the last day we woke up at midnight. So different people wake up at different times. So some people woke up at 11, 11:30. They started trekking by midnight. I think because we were moving faster than average, we slept an extra hour, and so we didn't depart till 1 a.m. And then we caught up with the groups that had departed an hour and a half before us. But it took us maybe 5 hours because we were there at sunrise. It took us about 5 6 hours to do like maybe 2 kilometers, or I don't remember the exact distance, but you just move really slow once you're much higher. So my point is, it was definitely enjoyable. We will typically get enough sleep. We will start trekking. We will get there and way before sunset. So it never felt like it was a very busy schedule. Like if I think about it, we can probably do it in less days because we're physically fit and because we're used to the altitude. But acclimatizing is definitely super important when you're trekking, especially at high altitude. So, whatever, 6 7 8 days I think is the right amount for most people. And I think being fit, you can easily do it.
Awesome. Okay, perfect.